Hi, my name is Tracy Ruther, and I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Wowza Media Systems. Today, I'm sitting down with Barry Owen to discuss the live event landscape in 2021 and some of the trends we've been seeing. Barry, could you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself before we get started?
I'm Barry Owen, been at Wowza coming up on 9 years now, hard to believe. I've done many things here, but currently I do a lot of work on the solutions engineering and architecture, as well as things like this. I like to speak on streaming and trends in the industry, and give my insights on where I think things will go.
Thank you. So COVID has definitely transformed the live event industry. What are some tactics that organizations have been using to scale their events and create more compelling content?
What we've noticed, and I'll give several examples here, some Wowza customers, some not, but there's a lot of people now doing what I'll call pre-produced live, right? So they're taking the time to pre-produce segments, whether that be a presentation or, think about a conference where somebody has a slideshow and then they're talking, right? You may want to pre-produce that and edit that so you have a really clean presentation. You've intercut the slides and the person and things like that, and be able to then play that out as a live event during the event's schedule. A really good example of this and really done in a high-end way is a lot of Apple's events, right? Apple used to do these events live, like WWDC or even their product launches, and they've taken to doing this pre-recorded, and they made just some fantastically produced assets, but they play these out live when the event was scheduled to occur. And, Wowza Cloud has the ability to schedule things, play them out at the right times. And we have customers who take advantage of this. They'll create hundreds of pre-recorded assets and literally schedule out a conference weeks in advance. And when the conference comes, everything's just ready to go and the events play out. And of course, then these events are also immediately available for, VOD assets and on-demand viewing later. So it's really cool, and I think it does lead to a little higher quality content in many cases. Potentially, you lose a little bit on the interactivity if you were really in a presentation and things like that. And I think people will continue to kind of explore those avenues and even though we're viewing, say, a recorded presentation of me giving a talk on something, I may be there at that time answering questions in a chat while it's going. And since I'm not worried about my talk and I'm not worried about what I'm having to say at that time, I can really focus on the chat and answer people's questions in real time. So I think there's some interesting hybrid workflows you can look at.
So speaking of Wowza customers, could you give me an example of a company that's worked with Wowza to enable their virtual event offering?
Yeah, so we worked with a company you may have heard of, Freeman, who does many live events, conferences, trade shows, and things like this. And they have some unique needs, right? So they do global events where they need to have not only large audiences, but they needed to be able to work with things like multi-language audio tracks and multi-language captions. And they had built quite the infrastructure for their in-house when you're actually in a venue, right? So you'd go to a convention or you'd go to a trade show and you would be able to sit down and put on a pair of headphones and hear whatever the speaker was talking about in Japanese. Well, they needed to convert all that to a live streaming workflow because people weren't in the buildings, right? People needed to be able to consume this from their desks or from their house. So we worked with Freeman to virtualize that entire workflow where we could take in multiple audio tracks and we could take in multiple language caption tracks, make sure they were all in sync with the video, and then distribute them, to as many people in many locations in the world as we wanted to. And that was work with our professional services team from the very beginning on, hey, how would this architecture work? What custom code can we write to facilitate this? And then ultimately deploy this. And they've had several large successful events, and they do many events per month of all different sizes using this technology.
Awesome. And we did write a case study about Freeman that can be found on our website. It's definitely interesting how they've been able to customize their streaming workflows. So my next question is, how do you think that technologies like 5G and VR 360 streaming will play a role in how content is created and consumed in the coming years?
Interesting thing about 5G is that, I think to a certain extent as 5G proliferates around the world, it solves a lot of those first mile and last mile issues with connectivity. And potentially, as the penetration grows, it enables a lot higher quality on both sides. As it relates specifically to VR and kind of VR AR style workflows, those streams are usually fatter, right? So, a good VR 360 stream, you're starting to see more and more people use 4K and even 8K for those things. Well, obviously those streams need more bandwidth, they need more consistent bandwidth. Plus the quality of the devices on both sides, not only the cameras, but also the headsets. They make for some really unique experiences. I would love to start seeing more concerts and things like that be available in VR, where you can move around and kind of pick your angle and pick where you're viewing from and looking at what you're seeing. With the 5G element of that, now I can start to do that anywhere. I don't need to be tethered to my house or tethered to a computer. I can be watching on mobile from wherever. I could be experiencing it with a bunch of other people mobile. We'll do our own little mini virtual event and we'll have a watch party and we'll all get together in a little field or somewhere and we'll watch all this. So I also think that underserved areas where it's very difficult to run physical connections, whether that's fiber or even just, coax style stuff, I think it's a lot cheaper to throw up a network of 5G cells than it is to run a ton of fiber in many parts of the world. Hopefully that'll kind of democratize who has access and level the playing field for some of the underserved communities as far as that goes.
Okay, that's all very interesting. And what other predictions do you have for the live event landscape?
I mean, I think COVID was certainly a bit of a wake-up call for people in that, people crave live events. They crave that content. And when they weren't able to go to a concert or go to a comedy show or any of that, there's a very real void there. And I think not only will you be able to expand your audiences and your reach by bringing your live events online and be able to stream them, because people are going to go back to the venues. They're going to go back because there's nothing like being there in person, and that's awesome. But for those who can't make it for whatever, it's a lot easier to stream an event to 100,000 people than it is to try to pack 100,000 people into a 20,000 seat stadium. So now you have this reach where you have a much larger pool of potential viewers, and that leads to more monetization opportunities. It leads to people being able to build bigger fan bases, and it leads to people who couldn't, if there's certainly segments of people for whatever reason don't have the physical ability to get to an event or potentially the financial ability to get to an event. And now you can unlock some of those people and serve them as well. It's, think of cases as simple as, well, grandma and grandpa couldn't come to the graduation, but now they can view it live online. I think COVID really opened the doors to a lot of those workflows for people to see what was possible. And I think they'll continue to embrace them long after people are returning to the venues, just because it's another way to make the events accessible to a much larger amount of people.
Great. And to wrap it all up, could you tell us about how Wowza's technology can be leveraged by live event producers looking to implement virtual and hybrid workflows with live video streaming?
So Wowza, as you know, provides both software and services to really help people with a full end-to-end streaming solution. So one of the things we did do kind of fortuitously before COVID hit was we started a professional services group. So now we have the ability to really work with people closely to develop architectures, to build their workflows, and help them end to end to be more successful. And we've been able to do that with our extensive work with Wowza Cloud and the ability that it's so customizable and you can build many different workflows, and even with combinations of things like Streaming Engine and Streaming Cloud and the Clearcasters. So we have this array of products we can put into place that are really geared towards making the live event not only easy to do and stream, but highly reliable and highly scalable. So you can stream events from pretty much any time to 10 people to millions of people, right? So one of the great things about our technologies and our services is they're very flexible. They can meet pretty much any budget. They can meet pretty much any scale.
All right. Well, thank you, Barry, for joining us. And for those of you tuning in, we've recently published a guide on how to stream live events, which can be accessed at the link provided. Thanks again for watching, and happy streaming.